Of course, what can happen in these heartbreaks is that we fall back in the suffering in the pain of being the victim. Let me be more precise, of having lost something which we owned. Having lost something which we owned. So we lost a love. We lost somebody who told us how great we are, or we lost somebody in whose presence we felt safe and we felt okay. And then we are desperate that we lost that which somehow stabilized us, or which helped us, which actually helped us to have less suffering. And of course, that was one of the lessons Deepa Ma distributed, is that you don't own anything. Everything will be taken away from you at some point. And we saw already in the other modules, in the fourth module particularly, that we don't own ourselves. We're completely taken away from ourselves at all times, all the time. That is emptiness of self. So this reaction to be desperate about losing something which props me up or stabilizes me is somehow an illusion, because there is no such thing. There is no such thing. It's already an illusion when it functions, and it will never function for eternity. There will always be a point when it breaks. There will be a point when your partner, who makes you feel okay, who makes you feel a good person, will tell you that you're not a good person, and then it breaks. And then you're lashing out or whatever, or you fall into a depression, or you go shopping for somebody else. Or there will be a point when your beloved child will just turn to you and say no, and then it all falls down. Impermanence comes crashing in. And the interesting thing is that at the end of our individual lives, so when we look back to our lives on our deathbed, and our deathbed will be there for everyone at some point. The people don't ask themselves if they have been loved enough. You know, that's nothing you ask at this moment. What you ask yourself, and it's just an empirical, psychological observation. You ask yourself, did I love? Did I love? Have we loved the people who were important to me? My children, my partner, my parents, my community. Have I loved the earth? Have I been loving? That's what you ask yourself at this last place, because this is what you will be asked. This is what is important. This is the only thing that is important. So that is the guideline somehow for how to go on here, for how to learn again. So it's important to see that it's really a problem that is valid for all of us. This is the problem on the spiritual path. This is the problem, this is the challenge of the spiritual path. The challenge of the spiritual path is to allow yourself to love. That is the challenge. That is the challenge. This is why it is so hard. Then, of course, it is complicated by teachers who don't know this and who make something which is already hard even harder. Of course, that's terrible. To allow yourself how to love is the challenge on the spiritual path. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but it fits very well now to say that actually the antagonist of love is fear. The problem is fear. So you see, the antagonist of love, the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is fear. Hate is still love, a very distorted, very fearful kind of love. But it's still love. It's still some mix where love is woven in. But the opposite of love is fear. And we all fear. We all have been broken and disappointed in love, as Kabir Helminski said. We all have that place in our soul where we would know love and we don't. It is important to see that center of the spiritual activity, or maybe the whole spiritual journey is how to overcome fear. And fear is the biggest obstacle. But then again, I don't want to sound cheap, and I don't want to tell you, okay, drop fear and go there, because that is just a problem. I mean, everybody would like to get rid of their fears immediately, and then it doesn't work. So I think it is very important to see this, and it is also very important to see that in terms of love, with this emphasis on seeding it in your heart, or finding the seed of it in your heart, in the spiritual dimension, people very often tell you that the problem is your ego, clinging to the ego. And I've probably also said this in one of the modules, or maybe several times. It is true when we are actually empty of self, and it's true that it is wrong to cling to the self when we are empty of self, and this emptiness is anchored in our hearts, and it knows how to love, of course. But putting it like this is to not see sufficiently that ego is related to trauma. That if you armor your ego, if you put your ego first totally, then it is because you're incredibly fearful of losing something. You might be so fearful that you forgot that you're fearful, but it is fear. I would even say it is traumatic fear. It is trauma. So trauma is a form of fear which is very difficult to approach because it disguises not as fear, as something else than fear. And that is our problem. That's the problem of all of us, because we're living in a trauma society. And I mean, trauma was always there, and humanity has tried to find ways to work with trauma. I mean, trauma is of course always there because it can just hit you. Even if nobody is mean and everybody is trying to be good, trauma can still hit. So it is a challenge of existence. But we are living, that's my idea, my hypothesis, in a trauma society, because so much of our true dimension of being is denied in this society. In a world in which we are told that there are only dead things, and these dead things compete with one another, and you need to be a competitor and a winner and a warrior and a fighter in order to win, and otherwise you will be thrown under the bus, which is more or less capitalism, which is the war of all against all. There's only trauma. When we are truly spiritual beings of the heart, and we have to live in this world, and we are profoundly traumatized. And trauma, I would say, is to have experienced that the right to exist was denied to me. The right to exist. So it can happen on this very corporal way, that you die, nearly die, or you're badly injured. Or psychologically, somebody denies you the right to exist by devaluating you all the time. That's the same thing. Trauma means this ingrained experience that I'm denied my existence. And of course, included in this is the fear that it will be repeated. So trauma is a sort of paralyzation by fear of repeating something which denies me my existence. And this is serious. So this is not something which we can easily go over. This is serious and this is deep, and we see this all around us, that people would like to get over it and they don't even know that they have it. They don't know how to get over it. And then again, they try to find somebody who is somehow alleviating it from them, and it doesn't work like this. So you have this experience of being broken, and then it creates the shame that as broken, you never have the right to exist. And so your brokenness must be hidden. So that's what's called the trauma defense mechanism. That trauma hides, trauma doesn't show itself, trauma denies itself. You know, somebody will tell you after behaving like a broken person, I'm not a broken person. If you only loved me, I'm speaking from the rich wealth of my experiences with people, with relationships. If you need to hide what you are, then you hide your feelings. And if you hide your feelings, you hide what is real. You hide what you feel, what you know about reality, what you know about yourself. And you hide your feelings in a way that you don't know that you hide your feelings. If you have a job interview and you're totally nervous and you hide your nervousness because you want to get the job, that's just strategy. But if you don't know that you're nervous and then you act up as a terrible narcissist in this interview, then you're hiding your feelings. And you still get that job, of course, because it's a CEO position and they only hire narcissists. That's how it goes. So when you hide your feelings, then you're not true. You're not real. And you can never taste the taste of God, which is related to his most secret name, which is sincerity. Ibn Arabi quoted him already twice. The most secret name of God, which is, I am what is real. I am what is real. And fear makes us hide what is real and forget that we have hidden what is real. So it makes us unreal, and then it disconnects us with what is most profound in us. It disconnects us with that fresh spring in our chest, as Rumi said. And this can be very confusing for others or for ourselves, because then we don't even know what it is about. And this is, I would say, the bulk of the terrible suffering and painful confusion in romantic relationships, is that people hide, that people are hidden to their feelings, that feelings are hidden to people. And it can give terribly painful paradoxic behaviors, which you really have difficulty to wrap your head around. So that friend who was convinced that she always would be abandoned, and who behaved romantically in a way that she would surely be abandoned, who created this abandonment, who fabricated this abandonment without knowing, and then was desperate, totally desperate, when abandoned. But being abandoned was safe. Being abandoned was safe because it was a state of being dead to something which was safer than the risk of dying again to something. But that is a behavior which will never allow you to be given the gift of life the heart wants to give you. Of course, you can even be convinced that you were given the gift of life, and you can be very spiritual and bliss out, so you don't need to change anything that paralyzes you in this fear system. That's what is called spiritual bypassing. You don't touch anything on the deep level of your trauma structure, but you hang out in the blissful areas. And you can even be a brilliant meditator. You can even have a radiating face. And when love comes and asks you to love, you can't do it. You stand there, and your cup is meant to be filled, and you can get as much as you want because love is endless, and you've thrown away the cup. So that is all very important, and it's important to see that this is a big challenge, and it's not done by somebody telling you how it is done. So as Kabir Helminski says, it is premature to speak of self-transcendence, which is needed in surrendering to your heart, before someone has a viable ego. If you don't know yourself at all because you're completely hidden in your trauma defense mechanisms, who is it that you can transcend? So that is a big problem. The problem of I am not good enough. The problem of not even knowing that I think I'm not good enough. So this is what makes Jack Cornfield, again, say that much of spiritual life is self-acceptance, maybe all of it.